All right, how's it going, everybody? We are back with another Trevor Shimmy collab episode. Today, we're going to talk about a number of topics. First, we're going to talk. Jimmy's got some diet hacks he wants to share with us, and then we are briefly going to touch on soreness and an indication. Is it a valid indication for muscle growth and progression? And then we're going to answer some questions as well. So, how you guys doing tonight?
Good. How about you?
Amazing.
Good. Still waking up, but I will be awake in 20 minutes with this coffee.
Yeah. Hey, you are energy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Natural
Yes. Yes. Yeah. So I have
Yeah.
3 quick diet hacks to start us off. List may not apply to you. It may apply to you. I could tell you it's applying to me right now as I'm dieting. So hopefully this helps you. So tip number 1, if bread and if you can eat bread while you're dieting, I have found that toasting my bread and essentially making the bread more arduous to eat and chewing more has led this to be a really good diet hack for me to eat less. Whereas if my bread is like really cakey and soft, I want to eat more of it. That might just be a me thing. I know some people have the opposite experience, but that's just me. Tip number 2, dry cereals, especially whole grain dry cereals without milk. So frosted mini wheats come to mind, oatmeal squares, if you know what that is, honey nut Cheerios, if you can handle that. Kashi cereal, any whole grain, once again, same principle. If it requires a lot of chewing, a lot of work to do, you may eat less. And obviously, these things are chock full of fiber, so it might be a good idea. And the third tip for you is if you can delay your first feeding time of the day, this might serve you well. So a lot of people wake up in the morning not ravenously hungry, but either full and bloated or just neutral. So if you feel full and bloated, it's obviously intuitive. But if you wake up kind of neutral, if you can delay that first meal for even 30 minutes or 40 minutes, you're buying yourself a larger feeding window later in the day. And most of us, as far as I know, usually get hungry in the afternoon and the evening time. So finding a way to bias a little bit more of those calories to later in the day and not as much earlier in the day, especially as you wake up, you're usually working or getting to the business of training or whatever. This might be a good idea. Those are the 3 tips that I have. Use them if you will. If they don't apply, well, guess it's fuck me. And that's it.
Trevor, do you have any thing to add to those tips or any
So the first tip Shimmy has, I actually have the opposite experience where toasting bread makes it more palatable to me, and I would want to eat more of it. So that one you might have to play with. But the second tip in particular, of basically having food that's harder to eat, there is actually research on it, and I'm sitting here trying to think of the word. And viscous, the more viscous a food is, I don't even think that's the right word, but the easier it is to overconsume.
So viscous is like thick and fatty.
The more, yeah, I'm thinking like mashed potatoes. Even if you don't put,
it's like processed to a degree. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's that further
I know. Yeah.
So, that with cereal, and Shimmy and I have had this conversation, if it gets soggy, you can eat more of it in a quicker period of time. The more you have to sit there and chew and chew and chew, the longer it takes. Your jaw gets tired. You get a freaking jaw pump, and you're like, all right, I'm done eating. So it's definitely, that's a really good tip. And as far as the pushing your meal back, that's actually a really good idea. And I suggest a lot of people do that. And even if, like if you're not training in the morning in particular, it can be really a good idea to just have a shake in the morning.
Yeah.
As a way to bias, more calories in the day. I will say I have a couple of clients who are people that are morning eaters.
Mm-hmm.
So just as a slight addendum to Shimmy's tip is find when you're the most hungry and look at ways you can bias your intake to those times.
Sure. Absolutely. Yeah.
That can be a lifesaver on a cut.
100%.
Definitely. One thing, this is really particular, but since Shimmy said that about eating dry cereals, I have a way in which I eat mini wheat when they're dry. I like bite the frosting off and then I eat the mini wheat.
Yes,
I don't know. That's funny. That's exactly funny. But it definitely, I can see it being a benefit of like, you have a bag full of your serving of mini wheats and you just have to chew each bite individually. I used to do this with in prep. I would take potatoes and cut them into like fry slices and I would eat way slower because I would take my fry, dip it in some like reduced sugar ketchup, and then eat it instead of taking all of my potatoes and just shoveling them in.
Oh, you mean
So I
you
can,
mean like this, for example?
yes, exactly like that. Are you eating that right now? Or making that
I
right
have
now?
potatoes going in my microwave, right? Meow.
I'm just glad you didn't say you were going to eat that raw.
No.
Another diet hack.
This podcast has to get a little bit more popular before I start doing weird eating things.
Hey, I did that on a TikTok. Did you see that one?
Oh yeah, I remember that.
potato
You
one.
were, you were
The
braver than I
crunch.
was. I couldn't
The
do
crunch. It was
But
for
I'll
the
tell you,
shock
man,
value.
frosted mini wheats are a great dieting food. Personally, I don't hear a lot of people talk about it, but oatmeal square life is Quaker oatmeal. It's got 44 grams of carbs, 5 grams of fiber, 9 grams of sugar. It tastes great, and you can eat a lot of it.
I have no idea what that is.
Yeah, you need to. Oatmeal
Did you say the
squares,
oatmeal
honey nut
squares? Oh yeah,
flavor,
yeah, I love those.
cinnamon and brown sugar. They all taste relatively the same. Honey is my ish, and highly recommend. I'm not sponsored by Quaker yet. We're in talks.
They take a while to get soggy too. They definitely are a lot crunchier of cereal.
Yeah, they're my favorite, like, healthy cereal.
Yeah.
If I'm massing, I want soggy cereal because I prefer soggy cereal, and if I'm gonna eat that much, it's the only way I'm getting through it.
It's true. Makes sense. Makes sense.
So I wanted to get your guys' input. I sent a little infographic from Lane Norton into our chat, and it was regarding soreness. And I still think, maybe in our circle this isn't as much of a topic of confusion, but I still do think I see people associating soreness as an indication for if they had a good workout or an indication of muscle growth. So I know you guys probably have some experience with this topic and probably some idea about where soreness lies on as far as muscle growth. So I just wanted to get your input on that and your opinion on that.
Trevor, you want to lead the way, or you want me to?
Yeah, I'll take it to start.
Okay.
So the whole soreness has gone back and forth. If you've been around for a while, years ago it was you have to be sore all the time. You didn't have a good workout if you're not sore. It wasn't effective if you're not sore. And then the pendulum swung in the other direction where like soreness means nothing. And, if you're never sore, that's completely fine. And if you work out sore, that means nothing. And there's nothing you should even think about with soreness. And now we're a bit swinging back in the other way. And that's just how things go. So soreness, it's not the greatest indication of if you had an effective workout, but it's definitely a good indication that you've stimulated the muscle you were trying to target. So that's one way to use soreness. So if you are telling me you're benching for growing your pecs and your pecs are never sore, I'm going to be a little skeptical about how much work you're actually doing for your pecs. Now, that's not to say that you have to be sore, but if you say you never get sore, that definitely just kind of raises an eyebrow. I don't think that you have to be sore to make gains. I don't think that it's a super indicative thing of you are making progress. But I will also say that, in my own experience, some of my greatest gains have come from times when I was relatively consistently sore. Shimmy, you have anything to add?
Yeah, so I would agree with you. I would agree with you in what you just said. I've never seen a situation, truthfully, aside from lateral delts, where if you're getting a pump and you're improving in the gym, that you're never not experiencing soreness. I think the topic itself might be a little bit off, because if you never experience soreness, I get the feeling that it's quite intuitive that that something is wrong. If you're getting sore all the time, it's probably an issue. But if you're never getting sore at all, it's either a volume, effort, or technique quality issue.
Yeah.
And I don't think that it would take a reasonably or even half reasonably smart individual to sniff that out. If your back is never getting sore, ever, yeah, I think you could probably do better. And if your back is always getting sore, first of all, a great problem to have because it's easy to fix. And second of all you need to do is peel back the volume. But I don't think that soreness is a requirement, but you should experience it every so often. If it's happening all the time, bad. If it's never happening, likely also not the greatest, unless it's a muscle group that doesn't lend itself to soreness. And I think that this changes for most people, but I also don't. And I also think that lateral delts are the only one. I think every other body part, in my experience with myself and with other people, lateral delts are the only body part that I can think of off the top of my head that reliably, despite the pump, despite progress in a movement, despite high quality technique, generally don't get sore. Calves get sore, forearms get sore, abs get sore, chest, back, shit, biceps for me get sore. So I know biceps get sore. Yeah, triceps get sore, hamstrings. Yeah, that's what I would say.
Do we have any idea why we think that is? Is it just because that muscle doesn't lend itself to stretch under load very well as opposed to other muscle groups?
I think that's a big part of it. So yeah, you'll find that with the muscles that tend to get the sorest are the ones that you can get a big stretch under load with. I think one reason why a lot of people struggle with back soreness is because unless you happen to have a machine that is designed in a way where you are getting a lot of tension in the stretch, most exercises we do are actually having the least tension there. So compared to like a squat, a hack squat, or an incline curl, if we want to use tension there, and that's where the movement is the hardest, they're experiencing a lot more tension in that lengthened position.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think that it's really important that, like, in this little infographic, and I guess these things tend to do well on social media, it's not as simple as muscle growth does not equal soreness, right? It's not, and it's not black and white. It's, again, somewhere in the middle where a lot of these things tend to lie, and it may be an indication. One thing I've heard you mention before, Trevor, is that fatigue is also a good indicator for people who don't tend to get as sore. Could you elaborate on that a little bit?
That was one thing I was going to bring up. So a lot of people, like, when I view soreness in myself and what I try to elaborate to my clients is when I'm looking at soreness, I use soreness as just kind of a catch-all term, but I just want any kind of perturbation of the muscle. So that can be the feeling of, like, sometimes people mistake this. They're like, oh, my back never gets sore. But then, like, the day after they train, they have this feeling where, like, holding themselves upright is more difficult because their back is tired.
Yeah.
Or your delts, it's like your delts aren't sore. They're not sore to the touch. You can't stretch them. But if you go to reach up to a high shelf, you're like, oh, your arm just feels heavy. And that's a perturbation. And that's all that soreness is too. It's just a form of perturbation. Maybe more extreme. Maybe you are getting more inflammation and things like that. But at the end of the day, we're using these as a proxy, and the perturbation is what we're using as the proxy.
Yeah.
Sure, I would agree with that, but I think it's fair to say that using a perturbation as a proxy is likely most appropriate for, I guess, the people in this podcast, right? So the mid-level, intermediates, and advanced. I wouldn't consider perturbations for beginners and early stage intermediates, but that might just be me.
Well, I don't think beginners need to worry about it anyway. If beginners are getting sore, they're probably doing too much volume if they're getting, because they're going to get crazy sore.
Sure.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think sometimes it is something that you need to have a little bit more like physical awareness, I guess, if that's for lack of a better term. Like, I feel like,
think about it.
Yeah, I feel like I didn't develop that until like the last couple of years, where I really started to pay attention to how things felt. Like, I used to just lift and then that was it, but like really, like, where where do I feel soreness, or like sometimes I can, for one of them for me too is sometimes like getting like cramps in a muscle too. Like sometimes my quads won't get sore, but they'll get kind of like shaky and like crampy, stuff like that, right?
That's a huge one people overlook. Like, if the muscle is following the session, if you're getting fasciculations or cramping, then you did a lot to that muscle.
Right.
And you may not be sore, but if if you're going into a session, like you're like, oh, my biceps aren't sore, but you do this, they kind of cramp up a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, that I would say if they're still doing that, that's probably worse than being sore. If you're
Yeah.
using it as a proxy of like, did you do too much? Did you do not enough? So yeah, that muscle cramping following a session or right after a session or whatever is a huge sign of the amount of stimulus you delivered.
Yeah, I think a practical thing for example, on my quads, if I push the volume a lot, I will get like debilitating soreness.
He did.
But if I
Hey, Dylan,
yeah, what's up?
You cut out for a second. You said in my quads, and that was it.
Oh, okay. Am I good? You hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. In my quads, if I push them a little too hard, which I might do at the like last week of an accumulation, I get like debilitating soreness. But generally, the sweet spot is, you guys still there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Generally, the sweet spot is I get a really good pump in training, and my legs get really shaky and crampy during or after the session. But I don't actually get that level of soreness. So that's just like a specific example for a specific muscle group, because I think it does tend to vary across muscle groups and then across people as well. But I just wanted to throw that out there.
All the way.
Yeah, and I think this whole like, oh, your soreness doesn't equal a good an effective workout, or soreness doesn't mean you're growing. It's like, at the end of the day, the things that like we do that tend to make us sore are also the things that we have to do to grow muscle. If you're using good control on your eccentrics, if you're training through a full range of motion, if you're training at long muscle lengths, you're probably going to get some level of sore at some point. And if you are trying to avoid soreness, if you're trying to avoid soreness, then you're probably leaving gains on the table. And if you're just like, oh, well, soreness doesn't matter, so I'm not going to worry at all about soreness, you might be leaving gains on the table from the other end where you're not allowing adaptation to fully take place.
Yeah. Like you're talking about like training with like overlapping soreness potentially.
Yeah.
Or just not concerning yourself with it.
Yeah. If you're just like, oh, well, whatever. Like I don't care if I'm, so sore I can barely walk. I'm going to train my legs anyway. Like,
hardcore.
Tell me you're going to have a good session like that.
Yeah. It makes a lot of sense.
Yep.
And one more quick thing. So muscle damage, like I've heard this, I think it was like probably in the RP book or something, like if muscle damage, and this is kind of an extreme example, is like if muscle damage per se equaled muscle growth, like if you hit your leg with a hammer, you would cause muscle growth, right? And it seems like that muscle damage isn't necessarily, it tends to correlate with growth, but we're not sure if it actually is causative. And I think that's where a lot of that confusion tends to occur, right? Where people think soreness is causative of muscle growth. It just may be an indication that you got a good stimulus.
Yeah.
Sure.
Cool. Well, we had some questions. Shimmy, you wanted me to pull these up, right?
Yeah.
Cool. Which ones do you want to talk about first? So you got a bunch here.
I don't have any preference. I really don't that these are going to take an hour, but maybe they will.
Okay.
I don't know.
Let's see. Yeah, let's just start reading them up. Right titty feels weird. Oh, sorry. What's the at? The at isn't a name. It's NFPGUI. Right titty feels weird at the stretch going into maintenance phase. Any precautions?
Personally, I don't think there are many precautions because you're about to go into a maintenance phase. So just be mindful, use lighter loads for the pushing movements that stretch that target area until the area feels fine. But you're going into a recuperative maintenance phase where the volumes are innately lower and you're not going to be pushing super hard. So if you're going to have any niggles, issues, or problems, that's the prime time for that to happen. So I don't really think there are many precautions, just mind your pushing volume and keep it low, and maybe train a little bit farther from failure than you would. So if you're going to be training anywhere from 2 to 4 reps in reserve on a maintenance phase, maybe for that pushing area, train 3 to 5 reps in reserve. And maybe when you're going into that maintenance phase, take a full week off of pushing before going into maintenance phase, and it might clear it right up.
Yeah, I would agree. Just to put a finer point on what you said about using a lighter load, is like a lot of times people are like, okay, I'm going to go to a maintenance phase, so I'm going to train, you know, a bit heavier for strength. Like, don't if the muscle feels strained.
Sure.
And don't do things that hurt.
Yeah.
If bench press hurts it and irritates it, don't do bench press.
Fair point. And if you're also running into other movements that may, just by transitive property, hit that body part passively, like a cable pullover, for example, a dip, for example, maybe
even if you're squatting and reaching back for a bar.
Sure. So any positions that may be a little bit compromising for that body part, don't do them, or do them very, very lightly.
Yeah. I mean, think about it. You're going into a maintenance phase, so your goal is to maintain, right? And if you can not incur injury or reduce injury, that's also a big goal of a maintenance phase. So like Trevor said, avoid anything that causes pain. You could probably make some modifications where you can still hit your chest without causing any pain to that area and still maintain the muscle just fine. Whether that be finding different movements, which I'd probably recommend regardless going into a maintenance phase, and also making modifications to your current training. I think that's totally fine, and rep range as well, like you guys said.
I will actually make a point on this to say, if it's specifically like a big stretch, this would be an instance I would say partial ROMs would be useful. Limit your range of motion. It's a maintenance phase. You're not trying to grow muscle.
Yeah, you just need enough to,
if you want to do a floor press or something so you don't overstretch your pecs are going to be just fine on maintaining through a maintenance phase.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Yeah, it's not a full ROM all the time. There are limited applications where that is very useful, and that would be one of them for sure. Cool. If you had no intention to ever compete, how lean would you get and why? Natty, if relevant. I think
okay, so I got a different answer because there's no specific answer here.
No, there's
right?
It's however lean you want to be, and you don't hate your life.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm gonna take it like he asked me specifically. So I'll answer that. If you know what a natty bodybuilding show looks like, I would say maybe about 1 month out from that. In my experience, about 1 month out of a bodybuilding show, and my natty bodybuilders can chime in here in the comments or on Instagram if they see this, that's when things get real bad. That's when things get real uncomfortable. That's when the libido goes in the crapper, the food gets ridiculously low, the step count gets exotically high, the irritability gets exotically high. Up until that point, I don't think that it's that bad. And if you're able to step out of the fitness context, the bodybuilding context, that's probably the most desirable look, where anyone that sees you is going to be like, man, you look amazing.
I think I would say it depends. If you're talking about like a amateur natural, yeah. When you're talking about like the pro level, like 2 to 3 months out.
Sure.
Like look
they
at
drag out those preps forever.
That dude like doesn't have. He's a freaking walking anatomy chart.
Sure.
But that's a different level.
Yeah, so if I was to give you maybe something a little bit more fake specific, I would say maybe 8% body fat is maybe where I would stop. But, those numbers don't mean jack shit, right?
Yeah, it depends on the individual too.
Yeah, knows. I would say visible abs, depending on your body structure, but like all of the abs, maybe a couple of veins in the abs, but not completely diced. Certainly not glute striations, I don't think. That's likely where I would cap it. Because also, for what it's worth, if you're going to do the whole mass and cutting thing and you want to live your life like that, you taking a diet break after what I'm talking about, you're not going to actually have such crazy diet fatigue, such crazy cravings when you stop at that point. And that's kind of cool. You know, you're not going to have any big type situations. I mean, you're going to have some discipline, absolutely, but you're not going to be absolutely ravenous at the end of the diet.
Yeah.
Albeit that you dieted properly.
Yeah, it does somewhat depend on the individual. I think some people get hormonal disruptions at different levels of body fat. It's probably going to sit around that range on average, right?
Right.
And you're going to have to weigh that out, really. Like I like what Jimmy's saying, and I think that generally you don't want it to be affecting other areas of your life, especially if you're not really competing. You know, if you have a photo shoot, there's trade-offs you need to make, but like if you stop it right before, you're still going to have a good quality of life. You know, you're still going to be able to maintain normal social relationships. It's not going to affect your social life very much and your, you know, day-to-day life and work-life balance and stuff like that as much. So that would be a great spot, especially if you're still trying to maintain those things in your life. I do want to add context for enhanced, just because I am enhanced and I like to throw that out there. That's a whole different story. And I think that people who choose to be enhanced that, you know, do this recreationally, there's a lot less risk that I would say you should generally take if you're going that route. Because I think competitively, a lot of bodybuilders take a lot more risk, and you can get a lot away with like fat loss. At the end of the day, is basic physiology, right? So, we lost Shimmy. Oh shit,
we lost Shimmy. Yeah,
let me resend him the link.
Happens.
Hold on one sec for him. Hey, while Shimmy's gone, I think you're muted. While Shimmy's gone, do you ever, when you're overreaching, get pain in your neck?
Yeah.
Oh my God, it's happening right now.
Yeah,
My
I
traps,
do.
dude.
I actually, now that I'm ancient and am in my 30s, the other day,
shut up.
like 3 weeks ago, I woke up and my head was hanging off my pillow. And so I just slept like that for whoever knows how long.
Oh,
And after like, it's been almost a month and my neck is finally like starting to get better.
dude, it's like debilitating. I got it. I had to fly out to Cali the other day, and it happened. I did a podcast, the one I just uploaded this week, and man, it was like just it was making me flustered, and I was like having a hard time getting my stuff ready for the trip. Like, and then on the plane, I had to like sit with my neck, and it was horrible. Is there, since we're on that, do you have any like remedies for that at all? Because like I don't know what to do. Like I just
put a heat pack on it.
Yeah, shit.
There's some. This is
have
you
no
can do
fear.
like,
have no fear. I'm here. My phone, did death. My phone did death. My phone did death. Sorry.
That's
good job, Shimmy.
Yeah, my phone did
neck pain. Specifically, ever get while overreaching.
Neck pain.
Neck pain. You can do some just static neck exercises where you like do neck flexion, pushing in, extension, and side to side.
Cars.
And that will actually alleviate some of it. I think there's a lot of things like if you get knee pain, you can do like a wall squat for 60 seconds. And it changes your perception of pain, and you can actually go through a bigger range of motion pain free after that.
Yeah. Okay.
Similar thing.
So doing that kind of, I couldn't even move my neck this way. Like I was trying to do cars, you know, like when you do the rotation, I couldn't move it to the right side at all.
Yeah, I couldn't, like when mine was just backed up, it's like this is all I could do to look to my left side.
Oh my God. Wait.
That's so brutal.
Did you just say you were doing cars?
Yeah. Controlled articular.
Oh my God. What is that? Controlled articular rotations? Is that what that stands for?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah.
Dr. Arturo Spina, is that the guy?
I don't know. Some mobility guy taught it to me
Holy
a long time ago.
Shit. So there was a period of time where I worked at a personal training gym, and this guy was so obsessed with cars. Oh my God. It was cars all day, every day, and not the Pixar movie. No.
Not the 80s band either.
No, not the fucking Hemi
I like
V8.
that band.
No, none of that. That's so funny that you were doing that. I haven't heard that phrase in a very long time.
That's the only time I do it.
Absolutely obsessed.
It's the only time I do it is if I have like a neck injury. Because I don't know what else to do. Like it's just like something to get it moving.
Yeah. That's the biggest thing, is just keeping some movement.
Yeah. Actually training. So I did a giant set for delts the next day. Gone. Didn't feel it anymore. That was
Nice.
like, that like blew my mind. Anyway.
Where
right.
is your neck hurting you?
It's like my trap. It always, every time I'm overreaching, it just all the way up my whole neck, like here.
Dylan,
Always
do
gets
you
a pain.
Dylan, you want some an advanced
Yes.
tip?
Please.
Okay, you have a girlfriend, right?
Yes.
Okay, just go down on your girlfriend a lot. It'll just fix it right up. Fix it up.
Yeah, I mean,
For the adults in the room.
I'll have to try it. We'll see if it actually helps.
I'm sure she won't mind.
If it works.
Yeah, right. Mutual benefit.
Yeah.
That's right. Exactly. You're not doing it for her now.
Like,
You're doing it for you.
when
Right,
are you
right.
overreaching again?
We're at week 4 again, babe.
That's right. That's right.
Okay, so back on my other tangent rant. I was just saying that, yeah, as an enhanced athlete, you don't really need to take a lot. I don't think you need to take a lot of risk to get to 8% body fat. I think a lot of people have this idea that they need to like just take a ton of drugs. But like fat loss physiology is the same, whether you're enhanced or not. Obviously, you can have other things that can help you. But like you don't need to run a bunch of stuff to get really lean, to get 8%. I barely touched anything until I had gotten to the really lean stages of my contest prep. And I think that, again, everybody has their own risk tolerance, but it's probably a smart idea to just have enough in there to, maintain, some strength, some level, not notice acute performance degradations, maintain your normal hormonal balance, and you'll probably be fine. So just wanted to throw that out there.
Word.
Oh, more questions here.
Yeah.
Okay, no mullet. What about porn star mustache? Is this referring to another question?
That's not applicable.
Oh. Often hit 1-0 RIR on first week of meso trying.
No, we did that. We did that on the live.
We did do this one, yeah.
Yes.
So if you guys didn't catch us on the live, go to Dylan's page and watch the live.
Maybe I'll put that up on YouTube as well, just for
fun. Why not?
What to do if a muscle with little exercise variations, calves/forearms, is stale in performance?
I love this question, Trevor, and this is a good question.
Yes, this is actually a really good question.
Yeah, so I'm going to tackle this one, and then let's see what you say. So if you don't have a lot of exercise variation because you either can't think of it, or maybe your gym just doesn't have a lot of the machines, this is where changing the rep ranges and changing the way you actually perform the technique can be useful. This can also be where manipulating rest periods can be useful. This is where maybe some of the things you might have read in Muscle and Fitness and Bodybuilding.com, where the nuance might actually be useful. Maybe not, maybe so. But the other things that I just said are. So to put pen to paper on this, let's say you're training calves or forearms. Let's go with calves. And you don't have a good calf machine, but you have a good leg press. So leg press calves is a great option. What you can do is train, let's say, in the 10 to 15 rep range with a pause at the top and a pause at the bottom one day. Great. You can rest a minute between sets. Next day, you can do it in the 12 to 20 rep range with no pauses, or with pauses and a 30-second rest period. Then on another day, you can do the 20 to 30 rep range also with no pauses or with pauses. I would probably recommend without pauses because it's going to take way too long. And again, with maybe 15-second rest periods. And you can do it that way. So manipulating, I would say, pausing and rep ranges might be a good idea. Those are two that I can give.
Yeah. So say like that. Let's use an example of you're in a home gym. So maybe that's why you don't have a lot of variation. So really easy fix for this. Get a dip belt. You can load up like essentially belt squat calf raises. Super effective. You can do single leg calf raises, single leg weighted calf raises. You can do long pause calf raises. And there's research showing that you actually changing just the angle of how you point your foot changes how it affects calf recruitment. So if you really want to get down to the nitty gritty, you can have toes out, toes in, and toes neutral. And that can all be separate variations on top of also changing your rep ranges, which is a great one. You know, if 10 to 20 feels stale, go 20 to 30. It's probably going to blow you up. If you're doing 20 to 30 and that feels stale, go 10 to 20. If you want to, I would recommend doing this with longer pauses just for safety reasons, but train in like the 8 to 12 range.
Yeah,
You know?
you can change your tempos as well. You can do an extra slow eccentric. Don't mess with the concentric, but you can do an extra slow eccentric, negative lowering of the weight, and then irregular eccentric. So
Yeah.
I think in bullet point format, to give it to you, you can manipulate rest periods, you can manipulate tempo, you can manipulate rep range, and you can manipulate pausing.
Yeah,
right.
Those 4 are great ways that can buy you a long training time of variation.
And also single to double leg. You can get a lot of variation with just that.
Yeah. Yeah. You could like just
so
literally
respectfully, I hate that one. So I chose to not include that.
Oh.
Well,
I don't like that. Huh?
And I said, well, it's because you suck.
No, it's because the shit already takes me long enough as it is. I ain't unilateraling the shit too.
It doesn't take that long if you just
especially if you just switch them. Yeah.
It's not like you're out of breath when you do calf raises, and if you are, then do some damn cardio.
No. But it just
takes. I walk up.
You can go back
and
forth.
No, yeah, and I like that because I feel like people underestimate how creative you can get with just a step and either a weight belt or some dumbbells. How many variations you can do? You can do it bent over as well. Not that it makes a huge difference as opposed to standing straight up, but it's a little bit less load from your trunk. You know, there's so many things, and then single leg, double leg, and then all the different training modalities. So yeah, I agree. You it is kind of fun sometimes because you have to get creative with some of this when you're limited with equipment. So, and you can make some great variations that way.
Side note to what you just said, and it's just a small aside.
Sure.
As perpendicular to the floor or parallel, I don't know what the direction is. When I'm doing calf raises, the happier I'm going to be. Calf raises where you're straight up, they all suck. In my opinion, they all stink. All
donkey calf raises, forgotten exercise, so good.
What?
Donkey calf raises.
Right. And any variation of that. So if you have access to a stair and your stair has a stair, oh my God, what is that called? What's the bar called? Is it called a rail on a regular stairs, a set of stairs?
Yeah.
Handrail.
Handrail, whatever. Yeah, so if you have one of those, motherfuckers, if you have one of those, the more that you can grab that to ultimately get this thing, the urge to saying bent over, because I don't want to say that. That's a good idea.
Just a quick aside, my dog just got in my box of protein bars.
Word up.
Oh,
that's
no.
Your dog Jack AF.
Jack dog.
You see just a huge ass fucking dog walking through the background.
That's right.
Jack Yorkie.
Let's see. We got some more here. We didn't touch on this one, the 10 to 20 sets question.
No,
correct?
We didn't.
How do you get 10 to 20 sets per muscle a week? I already feel fatigued with 6 to 9 on 5 days. And this is from Musta TVRI.
Yeah, he asked good questions. So 10 to 20, remember Musta is just a range. Wow, his name's Musta. DJ Mustard. Mustard on the beat.
Love DJ Mustard.
10 to 20 is just a range. There's nothing magical about it. If you're doing 6 to 9 per session, so you're getting 12 to 18 sets per body part over the course of a mesocycle, I think it's totally fine.
Sounds great.
Yeah, so I wouldn't so much worry about that. And I don't think that there's any problem with that, because if I was only training 5 days a week, and let's say I was trying to actively get 10 to 20 sets per body part in a 5-day split over 5 sessions, I don't think that I could. So I think your 6 to 9 is probably right there. How do you get it? 10, 20 sets? Add a training day. Maybe that's how you do it. Add a training day. Or if I really wanted to do it, I would just pick easy fucking exercises that require a lot of sets, and then I could do it. But like, that's not actually what you're asking. And I know that. I'm just kidding.
Well, also remember, the 10 to 20 sets is just an aggregate average.
Right.
There are people outside on both ends.
Right.
You know,
but he's getting 12 to 18. Like, he's right there.
Yeah, so he is getting 12 to 8. Like, that's what he's getting normally. Is he doing that many sets per week or per session?
It sounds like he's asking, how do I get 10 to 20 because I'm doing 6 to 9. He's already feel fatigued at 6 to 9.
6 to 9 per week.
but
He's asking how to get 10 to 20 per week, right?
Oh, so maybe I'm wrong. Maybe
Yeah,
thought it was 6 to 9
you might only
twice
need
a week.
you might only need that.
Yeah.
I am averaging, I don't think I've gone over 9 sets of quads a week this year.
Same.
And my legs have grown consistently all year.
All right. Well, I'll chime in here for the guy that doesn't have ginormous quads like you guys. My quad volume usually goes up to about 15, 16 sets in a week.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, that sucks.
You didn't, yeah. It is what it is.
2.5 minute lunges.
Yeah, that makes sense now. It all makes sense.
That's right.
But no, for real though.
Yeah, exactly.
10 to 20 is just an aggregate average. You might not need it. If you feel just beat to hell, fatigued to the point you can't perform anymore, when you get to 9 total sets, there you go. That's what you need.
That goes back to our first conversation.
Yeah.
How you have a friend who takes 1 to 2 sets on some exercises.
Okay.
You know,
okay. Yeah. My training partner and I, we, for the holidays and stuff, we're kind of on off schedules, but this was his final week of training. So because I'm a good training partner, I went for moral support on his last leg day. He did 3 total working sets, the entire damn workout.
Wow.
He did 1 set of stiff deadlifts, a myo rep set of leg extensions, and 1 set of the Rogers pendulum squat. And he could barely walk.
He's strong, right? Relatively
He's
speaking.
pretty strong, yeah.
Yeah.
How's his muscle growth response? I'm curious.
Extremely good.
Oh, damn.
The dude is like a hyper responder.
Yeah.
Yeah, sounds.
I know. That's interesting.
And and granted, that's an extreme end of the bell curve.
Right. But you always have those outliers, and you could
but
be one of
to
them.
Say that, like, yeah, you're getting 6 to 9 sets, throughout every muscle group through your whole body.
But wait a minute, hold on. Now I feel like I did the guy a disservice because I rambled. I didn't actually give him any advice. So, Musa, some advice for you. If you're doing 6 to 9 sets a week and you believe that you should be doing more volume, but you can't, the first thing that you could do is probably do some cardio to get in better shape so you can recover faster, so you can do more. The second thing that I would ask is, how much time are you allotting? Are you doing 6 to 9 sets, but you can only train for 45 minutes? Because if you're only training 45 minutes to an hour, 5 days a week, don't expect to do 10 to 20 sets per body part. Even with antagonistic supersetting, it's likely not going to happen.
Yeah.
So I think the only actionable thing that I can say, because I don't really have any more context, man, is get better cardio.
I would be curious if maybe next time he can respond with another question, or if he happens to have a YouTube, leave a comment.
Oh wait, or maybe he was also training too close to failure. You might also be training too close to failure, and that's why you're doing 6 to 9 sets, because you can't handle it. Maybe you actually need to ease up a little bit.
But I would be curious why he thinks does he think he needs it because that's what he hears? Because again, if that's the case, then maybe he doesn't need to do it. So I would just like, if you're progressing well, if you are gaining size, if you are gaining strength, and you feel fatigued at 9 sets a week, I don't think you need to do more.
Right. Don't feel you have to hit a certain number, an arbitrary number.
These are just averages based on a large population scale.
One thing I will add is frequency. If you increase your frequency, it might make a small difference too of how much volume you can tolerate.
That is a good point. That goes back to like Shimmy saying, add a 6th day. Yeah,
but we don't know what his frequency is, right?
Yeah,
we just 5 days a week.
It's really hard to answer this without context. There's so many questions that we can ask that would, help us nail down the answer. But I think we can boil this down to, if you're making progress, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
If you're not,
have you guys ever seen the campaign with Will Ferrell and Zach Galifianakis?
It's been a while, but I've seen it.
Do you remember it?
I was gonna send you guys a clip from it, actually.
It's one of my favorite movies. Do you remember it or no?
I have I don't remember every scene. I remember the one where they're listening to music.
So context to the reference I'm going to make, and it's in line with what Trevor just said. So Will Ferrell and Zach Galifianakis are running a political running against each other to become governor of this small state in I think it's North Carolina. So Will Ferrell, his team makes an like a hate ad against Zach Galifianakis, and they start talking about his facial hair. And he's like, Zach Galifianakis has facial hair. Who else has facial hair? Saddam Hussein. Is he Al Qaeda? Nobody knows. There's just too many questions.
Well, you just got this canceled on YouTube.
And that's what you just said when you were like, Mustafa. There's too many questions. That's what that made me think of.
My favorite scene in that movie is when they're the one where the family starts admitting like the things they've done wrong. It's like, oh, we got to come clean, and then they all just start saying these horrible things.
Of course, man. He puts a butterfly or whatever in his asshole to make his farts glow.
To make his farts glow.
Amazing. Yes.
And then the other one is when he's like, can you give us some privacy? And then they put in music, and it's just like ass and titties, and like the song just playing over and over at the dinner table.
God, it's so good. I
need to rewatch that movie.
You need to, and anybody watching, you need to watch it too.
That was a good one. That was underrated for sure.
It's definitely one of the most underrated Will Ferrell movies. That's a fact. Nobody talks about it.
I agree. Are you guys cool if I answer some of the questions I got? Do you have a moment?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't mind. Did we finish all of the other ones?
I think there's like one or two more.
Are they quick or no?
Let's see.
Meow, 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 meow.
Pros and cons of keeping RIR constant versus progressing RIR through a meso.
Oh, I think that's pretty quick. Pro, you get awesome training and relatively hard training in the beginning, and that's cool. Con, you don't get the pulsatility of having easy gains in the beginning and not training that hard, and then really testing yourself and getting super, super hard training and potentially even more gains later on in the mesocycle. Con, your training is harder earlier, so you may have to spend more time in the gym earlier on. Another con, it's boring because you're training at the same effort level and your mind will also lie to you. So what you think is 2IR or RIR in the beginning might not be 2 RIR at the end, but fatigue has now compounded. And so therefore you may not be able to think the same. Pro, you may get more soreness in the beginning and then the soreness kind of goes away and abates.
The point you made about fatigue masking or fatigue
masking your judgment. Yeah.
That's actually one of my biggest things against it. You have two options. You either train to failure or like, because if you train to failure, you at least know. If you don't train to failure and you're like, oh, I'm going to go to 2 RIR, how do you know it's 2 RIR? And like you said, 3 weeks in, you have enough fatigue where, suddenly what feels like a 2 RIR is actually a 4 RIR.
Yeah.
5 weeks in, it's actually a 5 RIR. So you're making your training easier over time. You're just so fatigued you can't tell.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people say this because they're like, oh, well, judging RIR is confusing. Don't worry about it. Best guess week 1, and then just beat that every week.
Allow the progressions to lead you to your 1 to 0 RIR.
Yeah. I mean, the main pro about it is
progression.
Simple. The main pro about it is that it's really simple. But the reason why it's so simple is also the reason maybe why it has issues.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And again, I think that if you just like best guess week 1, I don't think it's a lot more simple than just like I'm going to add a rep every week.
Yeah.
Yeah. Plus you get to progress, which is awesome. Because a lot of the time those people hit a wall early on and then they rotate.
Yeah. In my experience, most people I've talked to who have done like static RIR training, not all, but most generally hit a wall in like 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So I don't want to go off too much of a tangent, but do you know any individuals who say they train to failure and actually train to failure every session?
Yes.
Nope.
How common is that?
Not common. Not common at all. I know of them, but they're not common.
Right.
Yeah. I know people that say they do, but I've seen their training and I've seen their training on a consistent basis. So I don't believe them. Because
that's what I was going to say.
They might say they train to failure, but their performance is literally getting worse.
That's generally what you see.
Well, or they say they train to failure and you watch them train and you're like, failure to what?
Yeah. And their measuring stick is like, well, I did like quarter reps at the end of the set or whatever it may be, right? It's just like there's no consistency. Is another way they can skirt around it. Okay. Another question.
Well, you can also skirt around it by using heaps of variation to mask that. So that's actually a really common one. People that train to failure all the time.
Conjugate is?
I guess so. Yeah. People that train to failure all the time, they can just change exercises every single time, and then it seems okay for them.
Right. No, I agree. That was one thing I mentioned when you were talking about that prior. Like a lot of the JP crowd, they make a lot of variation to mask an ability to progress.
Yeah.
My knees are injured that I can't lock out without squat without pain. It wasn't really a question, but
there's a part 2 to that. He asked if he should. Just not.
I see it here. Let me read it. Sorry. So okay, I'll read that other part. Is it a better idea to avoid lockout or just stop doing squat entirely and wait for recovery? Is that the other part?
Yeah, just don't squat. Now, if he means like he can't extend his knees, A, go see a doctor. B, yeah, I mean, that like BFR leg extensions and maintain. But if just don't squat.
Yep.
Heard. All right, you guys cool if I do some of mine?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Here, there's a few I wanted to address. I don't know if you guys know, but I got called out by Victor Black earlier today.
Really? For what?
He said that I was using his intellectual property because I had a podcast with Joe Jeffrey and we talked about safer use and first exposure and other practices. Yeah. So someone asked a question regarding that.
No. Victor Black is. I'll talk to you about that later, Shimmy.
Yeah.
I remember when Victor Black did that podcast with Mike Iswatel a few years ago.
I remember.
That was a good podcast.
It was a good podcast.
Yeah. Unfortunately, he kind of came back on it and did some stuff towards Mike as well recently. He just my buddy
I'll
just
talk
said
about that when we're not recording.
Thoughts on black models and copyrighted term first exposure. Just for reference, I looked up the trademarks. He doesn't own any of the trademarks, so I don't know what he's talking about when he says he has these trademark terms. I think he's just going around saying that he owns it as intellectual property, but doesn't legally own the rights to any of the terms.
Actually, is he related? Is he related to Sirius Black?
Totally, of course.
Who's that? Is that
It's a Harry Potter reference.
Oh,
I guarantee you, he's not a porn star, Dylan.
That's what I thought. I'm sorry.
I guarantee you, Sirius Black is not an adult film star.
No,
but he could be. Sounds like it.
I actually think I might be blocked by Victor Black on Instagram.
I was blocked by him originally, and then I was like, "Hey, can I consume your content still?" And then he's like, "Yeah, sure." And then he did this.
It's like, whatever, if you're gonna pay me.
Yeah, right.
Whatever.
So not much comment on that. Honestly, anybody who limits their reach by calling people out and spreading negativity and
I think he's frozen again.
Sorry.
God damn, Dylan, your Arizona Wi-Fi.
It really is. Like this one company just like owns all of Arizona and they monopolize it and it's terrible. Anyway. Anybody
Literally
who
not a word.
Yeah, we have no idea what you just said.
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yes, for now.
Yeah,
okay.
For now.
All right. Sorry. Jeez. I'll look at upgrading my Wi-Fi. I guess anybody who limits their reach by like calling people out or saying that they own certain terms, like you could be doing a lot better job of spreading positivity and helping your message get out to other people by collaborating instead of calling them out. But just wanted to throw that out there.
Also, I just want to throw it out there. I think that Joe Jeffrey has been around longer than Victor Black.
Yeah.
So if Victor Black is claiming that he was the one that like came up with that, I followed Joe for, I don't know, since like 2016.
Yeah.
Like when he very first started YouTube. So
And everybody's helping collectively to spread a positive message.
yeah, and that's
I
the
don't
thing
see
is at the
why.
end of the day, it's like, yeah, and I know Shimmy's a little out there on this, but all these guys are trying to make the enhanced side safer.
And all of them do credit him as well. Like if they have the opportunity to, they do. I just
Yeah,
don't see. It's confusing to me,
yeah,
Do you
unfortunately.
think he's related to Jack Black?
definitely not. Jack Black's too cool.
Oh no, Trevor, you're next.
What about Coffee Black? Do you know who that is?
No.
Coffee Black, is
Dylan?
that an actual person?
Dylan?
Is that an actual person, or are you trying to troll me?
That's Andre 3000's character in Semi Pro.
Oh, really? Oh, I don't remember I don't remember his character.
Jimmy, do you just do you look at like Rotten Tomatoes aggregate scores of like 30% or below to pick what movie you want to watch?
So this is another Will Ferrell movie, and I know all of his movies. So
Yeah, I didn't think it was that surprising. I'm like, no, it's Will Ferrell.
yeah,
Okay.
chances are with me it's gonna be Will Ferrell, Zach Galifianakis, Ben Stiller. Like, yeah.
Those are usually good bets for comedy, I think.
Mhm.
Okay. Another one. I think you said before you didn't agree fully with Mike's take on Anavar only cycle. Beginners, if I'm correct about that, and don't mind answering why is that. And what's your alternative? Just genuinely curious if I understand if no PED talk. No, I'll touch on this really quickly. Just because I think there's a few things. I don't think it's a black and white and or. I think it's just that Anavar and orals tend to be a little bit more risky. They tend to not
wait. You said oral. Okay, keep going.
Anavar and oral steroids tend to be a little bit more risky. They tend to not aromatize sufficiently into estrogen. Estrogen tends to protect a lot of our tissues. It also allows us to grow muscle. They also skew lipids and have toxicity to your liver as well. So yes, they may not be super suppressive, but if you took a lower a shorter half-life ester of testosterone, such as propionate, it would be in and out at the same period of time. But you would be actually exposing yourself to the reality that you have to make a decision of injecting yourself, which I think is really important, because I think you need to really understand the seriousness of that decision. And I think you'll have the same, you'll be able to recuperate very similarly from a small exposure. So I think his argument was like, oh, you do 4 weeks, you can get off that a PCT. Again, not guaranteed. It is likely that you will be able to, but there are some people who do
There's always that person.
Exactly. So there's always a risk involved anytime you take any of this stuff. And I think that the reality is that you could also do the same thing with a shorter ester testosterone, which is much safer and is a bioidentical hormone. And you can do very similar things, accomplish very similar things. So within the framework that I generally work with, I think it's just I can't even say the word safer. It's a better choice, generally speaking. But I don't think it is and I think you need to be able to assess the risk yourself.
Yeah,
that would be my answer to that. I think we touched on this before. Opinions on allocation of volume when it comes to lengthen versus shorten work for hypertrophy. I would say just generally bias the lengthen position when you can. That would be it. Don't worry too much outside.
I agree, but I think with all the stuff on like lengthen stuff coming out, people are going a little bit too far swinging in that end of the spectrum, just like we always do in this industry, where it's like, oh, if it's not lengthened overload, it's not worth doing.
Right.
I think that so in general, if you like take a really short bias exercise and a really lengthened bias exercise, the really lengthened biased exercise is generally, one, you can use heavier loads. Two, it's going to cause more muscle damage. The really short bias exercises are going to, one, require a lot lighter loads, and two, they're going to drive more metabolite accumulation. So if you're like, okay, I'm going to design a program where I'm going to use 100% lengthened overloaded exercises, I think you're likely going to run into an issue of you're not going to be able to recover, or you're going to have to train with a frequency that's going to hold yourself back.
Trevor, can
So-
you tell me some exercises in your program where you're actually training in the shortened position besides, say, a spider curl?
Leg extension.
But it's not the case, because in the leg extension, you're putting enough pads behind there to get as big a
but
range
it's
of
still
motion as you
shortened
can.
overload. I fail at the top. I can't extend.
Like
Short
you're
overload
still
is
generally
where
trying
I
to
think-
bias the length.
Where the
But
most
like the reason
tension
why I asked the reason why I asked that is the following. Irrespective of Milo's research and anything that's come out, I personally have always had a bias for as big of a range of motion in an exercise as I can generate. So for me, in every exercise that I do, whether it be a push down, whether it be an incline dumbbell curl, a lying hamstring curl, a calf raise, I'm always seeking to go to very big end ranges.
I am
And-
too, but this is a different conversation, and I can explain why.
Okay.
If you pay attention, what people are falling to now is doing tons of lengthened only partials, where they're like, oh well, instead of pulling all the way down to pull down, I'm just going to do this top half because this is the
Oh.
hardest part. And that's what I'm talking about. That's what I don't think we need to be doing.
Yeah.
I'm saying that we can still use these exercises, that they're actually, even if we're extending the range of motion, they're biasing the shortened range because that's where the tension is the highest. So a spider curl, a leg extension, a lying hamstring curl, basically any kind of pull down, lateral raises with dumbbell,
Right. Right.
depending on how you
Yeah.
set it with
No,
the-
I haven't seen, and I really haven't tried any
well, I do think there might be,
always complete.
I think there's some use and maybe some of the lengthened partial stuff if you want to mess around with it.
Yeah.
I think that we're so far in the direction where that's so all people are focusing on. I think you have to remember that using exercises that are more short biased are, one, they're good at fatigue management, and they're good for frequency manipulation.
That's interesting. That brings up an interesting thought for me, but go on and then I'll touch on it.
Well, so say if you need to, if you're doing, so the kind of the way I'm using it now, I have 3 days of bicep training. 2 of those days, one day I'm using an incline curl, the another day I'm using an away cable curl. That middle day, though, I'm using a spider curl because it's less damaging.
Yeah.
So
That's
I'm
what I
going to
was gonna say.
accrue less muscle damage. I'm going to accrue less fatigue from it, but I can still get a robust stimulus.
I like that a
So
lot.
I'm using it as a way to modulate fatigue and modulate frequency and manage fatigue.
But you
Yeah.
could also equate the damage by just doing an extra set or two, right? As
I,
compared to the other ones.
like, what do you mean though?
Meaning,
Extra
if
set
you're
of
gonna
gains.
say if you're gonna get messed up, say doing 3 sets of incline dumbbell curls, you probably could get the same messed up by doing 4 or 5 sets of the spider curls, not doing 3.
I think you missed my point.
I may have.
My point was that if I tried to do another very lengthened exercise that third day, it would be too much muscle damage and I wouldn't be able to recover on time to do 3 times a week.
I got you.
So using
I
the
got
spider curl is a way to get a robust stimulus without causing as much damage.
I got you.
In the context, you're getting an adequate amount of stimulus in, a few sets with that exercise. It's still a good exercise, right?
Yeah, exactly. My main point of all this was to say, I think people are taking it so far to the extreme where they're like, oh, if it's not lengthened overload, it's useless.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's a mischaracterization of Milo's work too, because he even said,
100%
like,
it is.
if you're doing that, you're definitely betting on the area where we have not a lot, like there's a little bit of a gap in the research, right?
Yeah.
Like we have a
That's
good
what I think that's what
idea.
he's working on right now.
Yeah, we have a good idea that biasing the lengthened position is probably, potentially causative of muscle growth. But he said that you'd be going out on a whim to only do lengthened partials, basically, or only do lengthened exercises. And I think, like Trevor said, there is some application for training other ranges, and I think that's a really, really useful application that you mentioned. Actually, that didn't occur to me.
Yeah. So sorry about that little rant, but
No,
this is something that's been percolating in my head for a little bit now.
Let me I'm gonna do one more, and then because this Morpsy asked a bunch of questions on here, I'm gonna do one more, and then I'm gonna just answer the rest of these on stories, or maybe even just do another mini podcasts that I release.
Okay.
Let me see if I can find a good one.
It's locked up.
Let's read through these. I don't know if we want to roast anybody right now, so it's not getting individual people.
I love cooking, man. Roast anytime you want.
Well, Terry asked where Shimmy got his beautiful southern accent from. Morpsey did.
I've been around, man. I've been around. I've hung out in many a saloon and honky tonk bars. Huh?
You kind of travel along the south there for work, right?
That's right. That's right. Travel along the South Bank.
Yeah.
Close.
My dad's actually from Dublin, Georgia.
Dublin, Ireland.
Georgia. The less impressive Dublin.
That's right.
Okay. Here, let's just do a nutrition one because we don't do a lot of those. Do you prefer to keep calories constant every day or cycle something like TD diet and NTD diet with a training day and non-training day diet?
That's a good question.
I keep mine constant. I know RP, especially on the app, has the your training day calories or carbs and your non-training days. I personally don't have any pulsatility there. I keep mine the same training day or non-training day.
I largely do too. I might end up with a little bit less on a non-training day, but that's mostly just because I forget to eat a meal.
Yeah.
I basically eat one less meal on a non-training day, but that's just because my schedule kind of allows it.
Yeah.
But my standard recommendation for clients is to not have separate training and non-training days unless we get to a point where we have to find a way to cut calories and we're trying to on performance.
Right.
Because it's just more effort.
Definitely.
Right.
I agree.
I've also found non-training days versus training days, and I found anecdotally that when I would have a day where I didn't train and I ate less, when I came to my next training day, I didn't have as much energy. I didn't feel as good.
Yeah, you're more gassed.
Right.
Yeah,
and
I mean, marginally, but yeah.
Right.
It's not huge.
There's something to be said on your rest day that maybe getting some extra nutrition and getting some extra sleep might help with recovery a little bit.
One thing I'll say is the whole idea of even beyond necessarily just calorie cycling, but when you're talking about specifically like macronutrient cycling, and you're like, oh, well, I'm going to eat like the same calories roughly, but I'm going to eat a lot less carbs on my off days because I'm not training. And there's all kinds, like, people come up with all kinds of like reasonings. Like the big one is insulin sensitivity, which is, I'm not going to get into that, but that's I think largely you would probably do better to eat less calories but similar amounts of carbs if possible on a non-training day than you would to specifically cut your carbs on a non-training day.
Yep.
So I do agree with that a lot, and it seems like some of the research I've seen, keeping similar meal times and keeping similar macro compositions of the meals, especially when dieting, tends to help with satiety a little bit. So there's something to be said for that. I do sometimes, especially in an off season, allocate a little bit more fats on rest day. Although, you guys still there?
Yeah.
Okay. A little bit. I will allocate sometimes a little more fats, especially in the off season on rest days. With the context that I've informed, if I'm working with someone, just to kind of throw that out there, with the context I've informed someone, they can kind of, play around with their carbs and fats and doesn't really make a whole lot of difference to their progress, just so that they can have more. I might allocate more fats just so they can have more free meals, like potentially go out and have some more fatty food.
Yeah, I'll be honest, when it comes to working with clients, if they're maintaining or massing, depending on how serious they are, I'll at the very least tell them protein and calories.
Yeah.
Just
what? And that's really good. You're much better at that than I am. I think I'm still learning in that regard, but I think that's really smart. Yeah.
Because I mean, and that's the thing, is like if you want to go out to eat, like you can get, say you have 1,500 calories to play with, you can go out anywhere and get a meal
Yeah.
1,500 calories. But if you have 60 grams of fat in a day, you're gonna have a hard time finding, like,
Right.
unless you're just not.
And you
doing
think
nothing
that
but-
that's you have to do that versus
Yeah.
oh, I can just play around with my carbs and fats a little bit and it won't make very much difference on my
Yeah.
progress, especially if it's one day.
Especially if it's just, outside of pushing to the absolute extremes, it just doesn't matter.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yep.
And one
For
last
sure.
thing, I will say I have played around, and I'm sure all of you guys have as well, with varying, and it just doesn't make a whole lot of a difference, because at the end of the week, your average of your calories really makes the most of the difference. So
Yeah.
you could literally just average it out,
sure.
and it would be the same.
So-
Some people psychologically it works well for them, some it doesn't. I don't think there's any benefit for recovery or performance for the most part, and there may be a slight detriment, but even then it's very marginal.
Yeah.
I just like the simplicity of having the same calories every day. Just a lot easier. Oh, I do remove a workout shake on my rest day. That's pretty much it.
Yeah, I'll like no workout shake or reduced protein
Yeah.
shake. But yeah, it's like, for me, if we want to go back to diet tips, Shimmy asked me if I have any. Make things as automated as possible.
I like that a lot.
The more you have to sit and think about every single day, the harder it gets.
Oh yeah, imagine having like 3 different splits of your calories and you're trying to fit everything in and plan out your day.
Oh yeah, like the old school carb cycling of like low day,
I've done that.
day, high days.
Yeah.
That's so annoying, and there's so much
Mhm.
extra added stress.
How many grams of rice do I cook dry? Like,
Oh, that shit is so annoying, and people think that they're so smart when they do that, and they
Yeah.
love to tell you what kind of tell you what day they have, right? Like, no, bro, today's like low day, so like I'm
burning
tired,
tons of
energy's
fat.
low, feeling flat. You know what I mean?
And it's truly just the psychological, like what they associate with low day.
Yeah, yeah, and then there's the whole like, you have six low days and one high day of like 1,000 grams of carbs. It's like you could probably just spread those carbs out throughout the
And
week
not be miserable for the whole week. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and it's funny because the people that do that are the same people that bash on like the old school, like, eat super strict, super clean meal plan 6 days a week and have a cheat day on the last day. It's like you're doing the same damn thing.
It's literally, so I that's a huge thing. We'll close with this, but like bodybuilders saying, name a bodybuilder that does macros. I'm like, what do you think when Chris Aceto gives his clients muffins? What is that? How is that any different than someone who's doing macros? It's the same thing.
Yeah.
It all ends up as glucose and fructose and amino acids. Oh God.
Let's end up on this because it's the same note. And this is just kind of a exercise to think about a little bit.
Sure.
If you hear this from the same people that's like, oh, bodybuilders don't do macros and stuff like that, especially the bodybuilders that like worry a lot about like what foods they're eating. If somebody were to eat all of their carbs from rice, or no, all of their carbs from potatoes, sweet potatoes, white potatoes, whatever, or all of their carbs from gummy bears over a 6-month time frame, do you think there would be any difference? Shimmy?
Probably not.
See, I actually think there'd be a difference.
Well, okay, outside of appetite and potentially blood pressure, marginally.
The reason
there's nuances here.
Well, and so the reason I think
sure.
there'd be a difference,
right,
is not because of that. It's because I think that your training performance would be worse because of more fluctuations of blood sugar.
Okay, I can see that.
And so over a 6-month time frame, it makes. But at the same time, it's like the reason this is just a little like dumb exercises.
What if you added
gummy bears for 6 months?
What if you added Metamucil with the gummy bears?
True. I don't know if that's actually true, because you'd be structuring the amount of carbs, have gummy bears before your session and during and after, so your blood sugar would kind of already be
but then maybe you don't have any for the rest of the day and your blood sugar is crashing. You need to have blood sugar throughout the day if you want to maximize performance over a long haul.
What if you
It's a dumb exercise, but it's just a
I know
funny
it's because
thing. I
nobody
heard it
actually
on-
eats like that.
That's true.
Years ago.
True.
Nobody actually eats like that ever.
Yeah, I heard
But-
it on a podcast 2 years ago where they were talking about why macros are dumb, and I was like, well, this is a dumb thing, but
In a controlled setting, maybe it wouldn't make a huge difference, but it would probably still have some
a
impact.
small difference.
What if you consumed Metamucil with the gummy bears?
I think that would actually ameliorate some of the issue.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Next prep diet. Here we go.
It's like bodybuilding.com misc form, like how IFOM started. Like you're eating nothing but Pop-Tarts, whey protein shake, and Metamucil all day.
Thank God.
Yeah. See, when it goes that extreme, yeah, it's a problem. But nobody actually, if it fits your macros, people don't eat like that. Like, I mean, maybe some do, but
In practice, started in the forums. Were you around when that happened?
Yeah.
me,
Yeah.
I was.
I wasn't in the forums. I like learned about it after. I should
When
have been in the forums.
IFIM first like took off, it was actually a thing where people were legitimately like,
Oh, they
their
took it to an
diet-
extreme.
like
Yeah, I've
that's
heard
what
Norton
they
talk
were
about
doing
that.
it because like, oh, they're proving a point, and yeah, it's funny because there's a lot of them that are like natural pros now. They're like, yeah, that was stupid.
Right.
It was the worst experience of my life.
Yeah. I again, in reality now, most people have a balanced diet where they have some fun food
Yeah,
and
it's
they
the
mostly
whole
eat both.
pendulum swing
yeah,
effect.
agree. All right. Let you guys get out of here. Thanks for staying on so long. It's nice talking to you.
Yeah,
Always.
it's fun.
Are we
Always.
doing next week, or I'm assuming it's holiday, so I don't know
Let's
if you guys
talk
are
about that. Yeah, let's talk about
Okay.
that.
I'm here
Okay.
for it, bro. I'm committed. I don't give up. I'm here.
No days off. No
I don't need
sleep.
to talk about it. I know I'll be here.
Yeah, no
All
sleep.
day. No sleep.
That's right.
Team no sleep. All right. Thanks guys for listening.
Talk later, guys.